Ladies, judges forward to Red Spirit. Come on in there, grass dancers. Step right in. Don't hang back. Come right in. This is the finals. It's showtime. Gentlemen, come right in. Grass dancers, come right in. Boy, I thought I was doing a good job of your boots over club kind of playing the retro fingers a while ago. Hey, let's give them a round of applause. Fancy brother, take it away there. Red Spirit, contest is on.
Whereabouts are we then?
We're just arrived in Yellowstone and we've gone around and we're at Tom Thumb something or other. Central base at Tom West Thumb.
Okay. And that's Yellowstone Lake.
Yeah.
See, they have that on one of those sprinkler systems. It is. I'm not kidding. This guy, he's taking it. He's wagging his tail.
What about it?
Ooh, is that hot?
That's not hot. Really, really, really hot.
I suppose you think that's funny.
Swing the pole around, dip it into the boiling pool and cook the fish without taking it off the line. This cooking on the hook feat at Fishing Cone became famous after it was described by a member of the 1870 Washburn expedition. Visitors often dressed in a cook's hat and apron to have their pictures taken at the chowder pot or the fish pot. Anglers often injured themselves while straddling the boiling water and their feet damaged the geezer's cone. Fishing is no longer allowed from the Fishing Cone. Are we on?
Yeah.
Trout by lakeside geezer. I wonder if he swam over that geezer, he'd just cook himself, wouldn't he? Just get a net and fish him out, you could eat him.
Absolutely. I guess he just likes a hot bath.
I bet it's lovely and warm.
His mother sent him out.
But it can't be that polluted, can it, if you can swim in there? God, it's massive.
You
Just
can't just walk through with it helpless like. But obviously knows how big they are. Sent here for its recuperative purposes by his mother. Obviously he's not well. Just to prove how close they come. Now which is worse? Coming off the path and getting your boots all acidically destroyed, or staying on the path and getting gored by the bison? No. You won't let me come and touch you. Got big dogs.
Still got a time. I got a picture of that. God, it's too tiny. I've gotten six pictures already. I don't want.
No, you don't need.
Is it? Taking a long time to recharge. It's taking a long time to recharge.
Chippy chipmunk.
Oh. Yeah.
Beehive only goes twice a day.
Is it?
Infrequent eruptions. Multiple birds can reach 200 foot. Surrounding ground can shake under ground steam explosions. During an eruption sequence, which can occur 2 to 6 times a year,
Oh,
which
right.
may erupt twice hourly. Experience a tremendous steam phase and continue activity 12 hours to 2 days or more. But I would say, looking at her, that this wasn't
This is
one
the
of
far. This is the far one.
a giantess, so I assume it's that one. But I would assume, looking at this, isn't one of the 2 to 6 times yearly.
It's green when you walk, when the pool fills, overflows, and large bubbles rise. Suddenly it erupts 10 feet or more. The water then drains back into the vent with the gurglings. Yeah, I'd say.
It's just all a bit much like hard work.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Throw your sunglasses. Stopped.
How much did you eat?
Tired.
terrace overlook
Phew.
provides an overview of this delicate and dangerous basin. The ground here actually pulsates from the pressure of steam and boiling water beneath the surface. Its features appear and disappear more often than any other hydrothermal area. No one knows for sure why. Even so, some springs and geysers have become relatively stable features of the Bighorn Sea. And we are currently looking at Porcelain Springs, which presents an ever-changing face. The area may be full of water from new springs or geysers, or it could be dry and quiet. Can you see the little one?
Oh yeah.
That's the best view of a little one.
Hi folks, this is Clark Ranger. We're happy to see a view of wildlife here in Yellowstone. It's also important to keep roads free from traffic. Also, there's the RV down below, Coachman, Pennsylvania Plate, needs to be moved to allow free flow of traffic in the incident, or, I screwed up, in case the ambulance needs to get out.
That was good. That was good.
Type in.
Folks need to step off the road. If anybody else is on the road, I'm going to move you all down the hill. This is too dangerous this way. Off the road. Yeah, like to the flower right there. Like that color, yellow color. That's all yellow.
No, I can't.
Let me see those just a second.
We saw how he jumped down there.
Teenager. He's probably 3 to 5. He's probably been away from his mum for 1 to 2 years. And how well he's over the
Come on, honey. Well, that's a hell of a walk.
What height are we at, dear?
11,000 feet. 6 hours of walking, and here we are at the summit. Okay, dear, I'll put the camera back in the car.
Now, it's my privilege for a few minutes to talk about the Battle of the Greasy Grass. It's the Greasy Grass River right down here where these cottonwood trees are. That's what the Indians call this battle. It's also known as the Battle of Little Bighorn, or Custer's Last Stand. Most of you know that on June 25th, 1876, one of the most famous battles in U.S. history will take place on this ridge behind me. It will be basically the high water mark, a culmination of 400 years of fighting between Euro-Americans and Native Americans. And as you look at this very pristine battlefield today, it is a place where the American consciousness can contemplate this struggle for this land during this time period. And by the way, as you look down here, you will see individual markers for soldiers and some for Indians. Shows you where they fell in combat. One of the only battlefields in the world which has that particular quality. And before I tell you the story of what happened here, what I'd like to do is to give you a preview of why it happened. This was going to be a cultural conflict between two completely different peoples that did not understand one another, appreciate one another very well. After the Civil War, there'll be a migration of Euro-Americans moving into this area. And they will conflict with the Native Americans who are roaming nomadically, living off the land, living off the buffalo. And there'll be fights for the resources, for the buffalo and the land out here. It will basically end up in what was called the Red Cloud Wars in the 1860s. Red Cloud, a major chief for the Sioux or the Lakota. He will win many victories. And by 1868, the U.S. government is ready to settle up with Red Cloud. They basically ask him to sign a treaty. He will win the war against the United States government. The U.S. government will give him half the state of South Dakota as the Great Sioux Reservation. He says, I will live at peace with the white man when I try and sign this treaty, and I will take the goods and annuities offered to us. So Red Cloud will take his people, and he will go and live on that reservation in South Dakota. And by the way, that area contains the Black Hills. And by the way, not everybody's excited about moving to a reservation. Some of the people want to live the old way of life, knowing no boundaries and no territories, going wherever the buffalo leads them. Those are men such as Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. They do not sign the treaty. They do not go to the reservation. Well, things will rock along pretty well for a while. There will be some raiding by Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse's bands out here. By 1876, President U.S. Grant says, you got to get off this land out here. You got to get to the reservation. He gives them an ultimatum. You better do it before the 31st of January, 1876, or we will consider you hostile. And the Army's coming after you. Well, Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse remain out here. And so what we have is the campaign of 1876. Soldiers will come from 3 directions to force these Indians to the reservation. One group of soldiers will come from Wyoming Territory. 3 Stars Crook, General George Crook, Civil War veteran, 1,000 men move this direction. You got a second group of soldiers leaving what we know as Bozeman, Montana. 500 soldiers under Colonel John Gibbon. Gibbon is also a Civil War veteran. You got a third group of soldiers leaving what we know as Fort Abraham Lincoln, Bismarck, North Dakota. General Alfred Terry, guess what he is? Civil War veteran. He's also a lawyer. And under his command, there's 1,000 men over there. Under his command is Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer. We'll talk about him in a minute. Before these 3 groups of soldiers come out here, they're told by the agents on the reservation, you can expect to find about 800 warriors out here. And by the time the soldiers get out here a month and a half later, those numbers will have changed. Now what I want to do right now is start my story. As the crow flies, straight this direction behind me, 40 miles away on private land, is Rosebud Creek. And 40 miles away from here, you will see some tall pinnacle rocks made of sandstone. And for centuries, Indian peoples have carved their stories and pictures in those rocks. One of the small drawings is of a deer. And a lightning bolt over the generations has hit that deer. There's a blue streak running right through him. It gives me shivers thinking about it. They call those rocks the Deer Medicine Rocks, a sacred place even to this day. And in early June of 1876, there's 3,000 teepees below those rocks. And by the way, there's a man down there in his mid-40s. He walks with a limp from an old war wound. When you see his photograph, his eyes can stare a hole right through you. He will dance down there for 2 days without food or water. And he's bleeding profusely because he's had 50 pieces of skin cut from each arm as an offering to the Everywhere Spirit. This man will pass out from all that dancing and loss of blood. When he wakes up, he tells his people, I've had a vision. Soldiers will fall into our camp and they will fall upside down. I give them to you because they have no ears, they will not hear. But whatever you do, you must not take the spoils of battle, lest something terrible will happen to our people. Folks, this is a prophecy of a great victory with soldiers falling into camp upside down, a defeat for the soldiers. You know this man's name. Tatanka Ayatanka. He's named after the great American bison. His name, of course, is Sitting Bull. And Sitting Bull gives this prophecy to his people below those rocks. Now, Sitting Bull is talking to other people out here. He's talking to the people under Red Cloud that have given up and gone to the reservation. You know what he has? He has a name for those people over there in the Red Cloud, his own people. Y'all are a bunch of fools. Why don't you get out here and fight for the old way of life? How do you like that rancid bacon and crackers they're feeding you over there? We're eating buffalo out here. By the way, the food is not getting to the people on the reservation as promised. And many people are also upset over the invasion of the Black Hills by gold miners. And so many people, dissatisfied, begin to leave the reservation in the spring and summer of 1876, and they join up with Sitting Bull's bands, and they get bigger and bigger out here. The Sitting Bull will move from that camp along Rosebud Creek. He will eventually end up on the other side of these brown hills. Between these hills and those mountains you see off on the horizon, they're kind of smoky looking. On the other side over there is Sundance Creek. June the 17th, his camp is right over there. It's getting bigger too. And they see the bluecoats coming from the south. Sitting Bull tells Crazy Horse, I want you to take 1,000 warriors. I want you to give them a greeting party. The warriors go out there and have a big battle on June the 17th. It's known as the Battle of Rosebud because it's along Rosebud Creek. At the end of the day, there's very few casualties on either side, but a ferocious fight. And by the way, the Indians have a name for that battle. They call it the battle where the sister saved her brother. A young Cheyenne boy is shot off his horse, and his sister rides down and saves his life. At the end of that day, at the end of that battle, George Crook's men retreat back into Wyoming. They're out of supplies and out of ammo. They'll be out of the campaign for 6 months. Excuse me, 6 weeks, excuse me. By the way, how do you think this makes the Indian warriors feel? Confident. We stopped the Bluecoats, except there's one strange thing. Sitting Bull's prophecy did not come true. The soldiers did not fall into their camp. That puzzles many of the Indian people. Well, Sitting Bull's bands will continue to grow, and they will eventually move into this area below us on June the 24th, the day before the battle. Now, if you'll look down there, you see the trees, like a big green finger sticking out towards the interstate, and all of a sudden the trees end, and you see the interstate. That's Sitting Bull's camp. That's his circle of teepees down there. But guess what? There's not one circle, there's 6. And they come down this valley for 1.5 miles. You see those automobiles glistening in the sunlight down there. That's where the other end of the camp was. By June the 25th, there's 6,000 to 7,000 people gathered there. About 2,000 warriors. There's going to be many different bands of the Lakota, the Brule, the Blackfoot, the Young Papa, the Oglala, the Mini Kanju, the Sanzark, 2 Kettleton bands of Arapaho. Village down there today would be a pretty good sized town here in Montana. Today the battle's going to be hot, 98 degrees. Children swimming in the river. By the way, young boys, 14 and 15. I see some of them in the audience. You would have a job to do on that day. Your job is to watch those ponies on the bench lands up there. By the way, there's 30,000 ponies up there. Big pony herd. This village can't even stay together for very long. It takes too much food for this many people. By the way, George Custer has bad timing. He's going to find out this village will double in size just 3 days before he gets here. It's a big village. Hot day. Women are down there digging up wild turnips. Some of them are taking down their teepees, getting ready to move the camp. They've seen more buffalo to the north. Nobody's expecting any fighting on June the 25th. They'd already stopped the Bluecoats. Most of the young men that will fight in this battle will be sleeping in on this afternoon of June the 25th. Why? There's been dances all night the night before. Social dances for the young people. But not all the dances are social. About 20 young men that are Cheyenne and Lakota, they will do a special dance called the dying dance. You say, what does that mean? That means in the next battle they will not come out alive. They will become suicide warriors. They're going to lay down their lives for their people. Well, that has a whole new connotation this year, doesn't it, folks? And as the sun came up on the 25th, those young men are paraded through these teepees, and they're given gifts and honor and prestige. And little of those men realize they're going to get a chance to lay down their lives for their people in less than 8 hours. Can you see the village down there, folks? Use your imagination. It's down there. Let's talk about the other side. Crook, he's been stopped. He's in Wyoming. There's 2 other groups of soldiers out here. You got Gibbon and Terry and Custer. They bump into one another on the Yellowstone River to the north. Now, folks, they don't have walkie-talkies. They can't find out what's happened to Crook. I'm sure Crook would have said, hey, there's more than 800 out here. Yeah. But they've seen Indian trails leading into this area, so they make their own battle plan. Gibbon and Terry will come down with 500 men moving this direction. George Custer, we're going to cut you loose with 600 men of the 7th. You'll hook down to the south and come back. Hopefully we'll find a village somewhere in between. Either one of these is an attacking force. They should be able to handle 800 warriors. Well, folks, George Custer will pick up the trail on June the 22nd. It leads along Rosebud Creek. And he sets up camp on that evening over there, and he has officers called. Now, folks, you know George Armstrong Custer, at age 22, one of the youngest generals ever. Civil War hero for the North. He had 10 horseshoes shot out from under him with just a scratch. Many people said he was blessed. He had Custer's luck. Some people called him vain and arrogant. Others knew him as a soldier who would do anything to get the job done. And folks, that's why he was out here. He was a bulldog. he told his men, you might want to pack extra salt. We may be eating our horses before we get home. We're going to follow the trail. But he has his officers gather around him. And the officer said George Custer seemed strange that night. He was very depressed. The first thing he told his officers is, I've heard there's some grumbling about some of my decisions. I don't want to hear about that. Unless you come straight to me. And then almost apologetically he says, I'll take suggestions from anybody, by the way. Anybody wants to give me suggestions? And everybody says, is this the George Custer we know? Normally he never asked people's opinions on anything. One officer says, I think George Custer's going to die. George Custer also says, I'm going to need everybody's cooperation on this campaign. Maybe he knew about some of the derision in his ranks. Because sitting in front of him is Major Marcus Reno, who had been in charge of the 7th. Until Custer came back from Washington. Now he's in second place. Custer had chastised him a few days earlier for disobeying orders. By the way, Reno does not like George Custer. And sitting right in front of George Custer is also Captain Frederick Benteen. He has hated George Custer from the day he met him. And by the way, Benteen doesn't like Reno, and Reno doesn't like Benteen. You get the picture, folks? Maybe why Custer says, I need everybody's cooperation. Well, those officers will sing religious hymns, and the girl I left behind me and turn in. The next day, they will follow the trail a little further, and they will set up camp near some tall pinnacle rocks. Now, folks, the 7th Cavalry is not just officers. Average age of the soldier here is 23. 44% of these young men are coming from a foreign country, coming to America looking for the land of opportunity. What do they find? A recession and no jobs. And $13 a month sounds better than starving to death in America. 19% of these young men are Irish and 17% are Germans. And as those young Irishmen sit around that campfire on June the 23rd next to those pinnacle rocks over there, it's a special night for an Irishman. It's June the 23rd. It's St. John's Eve. It's bonfire night. And if you're back in Ireland, you would celebrate around a big bonfire. And you would take something and you would toast your fellow Irishman. And you would say, Gu Merry Mead, Bo Erin, Om Sho Irish. Folks, that's a little Irish. And it means, may we all be alive this time next year. It happens every June the 23rd. Most of these men will not be alive 2 days later. They'll follow that trail past the pinnacle rocks. They will see the sun dance where it occurred. And George Custer leads his men up to these mountains you see over here behind us. Early on the day of this battle, June the 25th, he will send up his Crow and Arickaree Indian scouts. And you might ask, why are the Indian scouts, the Crows and Arickarees, helping the Army? Number one is, they do not like these traditional enemies, the Lakota. They want them off this land. The Crows, to them, this is their land. They want them off. That's why they're helping the Army. By the way, is the Crow land today? In the middle of the Crow Reservation. And as those scouts look down with the naked eye 15 miles away, they can't see all the teepees because of these bluffs. But they do see something grazing on those hills. What's over there? 30,000 ponies. They can see it from 15 miles away. And they tell George Custer, you better get up here and take a look for yourself. Well, Custer comes up, looks through his binoculars. He cannot see a thing. A haze has covered the valley, apart from thousands of campfires down there. But Custer does believe his Indian scouts there must be a village somewhere nearby. He's seen the trails are getting bigger and fresher. But George Custer's not like what his Indian scouts tell him. They tell Custer there's more Indians probably down there and you have bullets for your guns. If you go down, it's going to be a hard fight. Maybe 2 or 3 days of hard fighting. George Custer, in his always confident manner, says the 7th should be able to handle what we encounter. But he's no fool. He's got a battle plan. His men are tired. He wants to rest them in those Wolf Mountains over there on the horizon. He wants to do more scouting and reconnaissance and try to attack the village the next day at dawn, a surprise dawn attack. It had worked for him before. But George Custer's plan is going to change out there. Because 15 miles away, his Indian scouts come riding up and says, uh-oh, I think we've been spotted. There's a hunting party out here of Sioux. They've seen your blue coat. What was Custer's response? He was angry. We have not been spotted. We're going to stick to my plan. We're going to wait. Well, you don't see that in the Hollywood movies, do you? Glory hunting Custer wants to hurry up and get down here to where he can be president. Folks, do not get your history from the television sets. George Custer wants to wait. Half Yellowface, chief of the Crow Scouts, comes to Custer. Custer, you can't wait. If you wait, the village is going to attack you, or they're going to start scattering. You're going to be looking for Indians all summer. They're not going to wait for you to attack them. So George Custer decides that he wants to ride fast to try to get to the village before it can be warned by that hunting party out there. And at 12 o'clock noon at the base of the mountains, he will divide up his forces into 4 groups. He has a slow-moving pack train of 150 pack mules laden with most of the extra ammunition. He details extra soldiers to watch the ammo, pack mules. Don't let it fall into the Indian hands. Follow my trail towards Little Bighorn. And by the way, Custer quickly outruns his ammunition because the mules cannot keep up with the horses. He will give 3 companies, 125 men, to Captain Frederick Benteen. Now remember, Benteen doesn't like George Custer. He's told to scout the hills to the south. If he sees no Indians, come back and follow the trail. Custer does not want Indians escaping to the south. By the way, Benteen sees not a single Indian out there. He comes back, he'll be 30 minutes behind Custer, right in front of the pack mules. Custer will take 200 men for himself. He will give 145 men to Major Marcus Reno. And Reno and Custer will come at a fast trot and a gallop as they try to get down to the valley. And when they're 4 miles away, they'll be on the other side of that big brown hill you see out there. And by the way, from the other side of that brown hill, you still can't see down the valley. Can't see the teepees. But they do see something from 4 miles away. Dust is coming up from the valley floor. And Custer asked his Indian scouts, what do you think all that dust means? And the Indian scouts hadn't seen the village yet either. She said, we think the village knows you're here and they're scattering. Now this is Custer's worst fear. After looking for the village for a month and a half, he thinks they're fleeing in every direction. And he will make a fatal mistake at this point. Without seeing the village, he will tell Reno, go forward. Attack the village. It's on the run. And you will be supported by the entire outfit. So Reno will take his 145 men, and he will get ready to cross this river to attack this village at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Custer veers off to a high hill with his 200 men, and for the first time he looked below him into the valley of Little Bighorn. What does he see? 1.5 miles Indian teepees. By the way, nobody's running anywhere. By the way, he's happy. As he looks down, as he looks at his binoculars, there's women and children and dogs and no warriors in the camp. He can't see anybody. No warriors. By the way, you might ask, what was all that dust they saw from 4 miles away? Most likely 30,000 head of horses on a hot June day, kicking up dirt on the other side of the valley. Custer sees a peaceful village down below and nothing going on, no warriors. They must be away hunting buffalo somewhere, the scouts and the officers discussed. Folks, where are the warriors, do you remember? They're sleeping in the teepees now. Remember, they've been dancing all night the night before. Custer has ridden so quickly, he has caught the village off guard. And by the way, George Custer's going to find out in a few minutes there's warriors down there. He will wave his hat to his men. Hooray, boys, we've caught them napping. We will finish this up and go home to our station. And he will lead his 200 men down towards the river crossing. He will go down Medicine Tail Coulee, a ravine on the other side of this brown ridge right over here. Your car will take you down to that area. And as he heads down to attack the village at 3 o'clock, Reno's coming around those trees getting ready to hit it also. By the way, as Custer goes down the ravine towards the river, he will send back one last messenger that gets out alive. He's a young Italian immigrant, Giovanni Martini, a bugler. His English skills are poor, so they write on a piece of paper to hand it to him where he doesn't muff the orders. What does the order read? Benteen, come on, big village, be quick, bring packs. P.S., bring packs. Custer's wanting Benteen over here in a hurry with his men. And what's he wanting them to bring? 6 packs? 12 packs. Anybody? Ammo, pack mules. He wants the pack mules and the ammo over here. He knows he may need them. That young bugler races back and he gives that message to Benteen. Benteen folds up, puts it in his pocket, and he begins to come at a slow trot. We're going to find out at 3 o'clock. Custer's coming down this side. And here comes Reno charging in those trees, looking for the village, and he will see it when he's 300 yards away. And by this time, the warriors have seen Reno coming. There's going to be chaos and pandemonium in this village. Women and children running to the north screaming. Sitting Bull is helping his family escape to the north. The young boys on the hills are driving the ponies down to the teepees. And the warriors that have been resting will quickly paint their faces, braid their hair, put on their best war clothing in case they're killed in this fight. And Crazy Horse and He Dog and Black Elk and Hump and Crow King and Gall and many others will race towards Reno's men with the battle cry, Hoka, hey, it's a good day to die. As Reno swings around, he's been told to charge through the village. He puts on the brakes. He hides his horses in the trees. He has 100 men with Springfield carbines. They begin to unload into the nearest teepees, into the onrushing warriors. And Reno has a very famous quote down there, "The very earth was growing Indians." His 100 men are surrounded by 900 warriors in only 10 minutes. Reno falls back into the trees where he fights for another 30 minutes. The Indians are in the brush shooting at his soldiers. They're beginning to burn the brush around him, by the way. And Reno's almost out of ammunition. I see no support from Custer anywhere. I'm getting out of here. Come on, men, follow me! He tries to escape the village area. It will become a 3-mile route with 900 warriors chasing 100 men on horseback. We're going to find out that American Horse said it was like hunting buffalo. We rode up beside the soldiers. We shot them at close range. We knocked them off the horses with their stone mallets. Very few Indian casualties in Reno's retreat, but Reno will lose over a third of his command, over 40 soldiers killed. He's chased across the river with ran red with blood to the top of a hill. Chased by the warriors, Reno gets to the top of the hill with what's left of his bloody command. And by the way, this road will take you down to what's called the Reno-Benteen battlefield today. Notice I had a name there, didn't I? As Benteen is looking for Custer on this side, Reno accidentally bumps into him over there. He says, "Halt! I need your men. I need the ammunition." Benteen rides up, pulls out that piece of paper and shows it to Reno. Says, "Where's Custer? I got the factory. Where is he?" Reno says, "I don't know. I've been fighting in the valley. I haven't seen him in over an hour." Then they begin to notice something. All the warriors who were chasing Reno, they peel off this direction to the north. There's a new threat on their camp down here. Who is it?
Custer.
Custer. They begin to hear tremendous volleys of gunfire on that hillside 5 miles away, but Reno and Benteen are in no hurry to get out here. There's indecision on what to do. They sit there. The gunfire gets louder. By the way, did you know in 1879, at the Court of Inquiry, under oath, Reno and Benteen said, "We heard no gunfire." Folks, they went temporarily deaf. One of those officers down there says, "Come on, let's go." His name is Captain Thomas Weir. He's a personal friend of Custer's. And Reno says, "Permission denied." So Weir gets on his horse and he disobeys orders and rides this direction. And his 40 men follow behind him. And at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they will get to the top of that big brown hill. Now, if you look out there, you see that white automobile. Right above it is a mesa. Everybody see that? That's called Weir Point. It's 3 miles from here. And when he gets up there, he takes his binoculars out and he looks along this ridge. And he sees smoke and dust. And all of a sudden, warriors are coming up the top of this ridge up here by the hundreds. And he sees them shooting into the grass. But one thing that puzzles Weir is he sees none of Custer's men. Where are they? There must have been too many Indians for him. Custer must have headed north to find those other soldiers under Gibbon and Terry. Is that what happened? What's Weir actually seeing, folks? He's seen the very end of the battle up here at 5 o'clock. Those warriors will see Weir. They go after him, and it's 40 men, 2,000 warriors against 40. And Weir says, "This is not a good place to be." He falls back along with Reno and Benteen. They begin to dig trenches with their forks and knives and tin cups, and today you can still see those trenches down there. And for the next 24 hours, the warriors will try to go over that hill, but they'll be repulsed by the soldiers. Terrific fight, casualties on both sides. Captain Frederick Benteen will show his bravery as he walks among the Indian gunfire, standing, prompting his men to fire, leading charges off the hill with his soldiers as the Indians get too close. But after 24 hours of fighting on that hot ridge down there, the Indian peoples pack up their belongings. And late on the evening of June the 26th, they head towards those Smoky Mountains you see down in Wyoming, the Bighorns. And the soldiers down there are going, "What's going on? Why are they leaving? We hadn't whipped them. It's probably a trick to get us off the hill. They want to kill us all." But the next morning on June the 28th, they will discover why the village had packed up. Excuse me, June the 27th. Why the village had packed up. The world seems to contain an endless supply of bluecoats. They just keep coming. First there was Crook, then there was Custer. Guess what? Here comes the other soldiers. Remember them? Gibbon and Terry. They arrive on the scene. They will find the abandoned village site, and they will rescue over 350 surviving members of the 7th Cavalry here. So folks, there are survivors here with Reno Benteen 5 miles away. The first question those soldiers that are relieved down there asked General Terry is, where's Custer? With you? And General Terry, with a tear in his eye and a lump in his throat, says, no, we have found George Custer in 197 bodies strewn along a ridge. Well, folks, what happened to Custer and Crazy Horse? I'm about to tell you the story as told by the Native Americans who fought and survived this battle and talked about it. 1983, a fire swept over this battlefield. That's why you don't see much sagebrush out here. But we were also able to go over the metal detectors. We found over 6,000 artifacts. The archaeology says that the Indian accounts are very factual. We know that George Custer headed to the river, but he will not be able to get across. He will fall back up along this ridge. The warriors are beginning to chase him. They've stopped Reno. They're all coming this direction. Custer will leave about 120 men on that hillside over there. It's called Calhoun Hill. It's commanded by his brother-in-law, James Calhoun. The warriors are coming up the backside of the ridge over there. Two Moon and Gall are over there. Crazy Horse will ride down the valley and come up a deep ravine and ride over the ridge, firing his Winchester at those soldiers down there. By the way, the Indians have 44 different types of firearms. They're well prepared. They've been trading for these weapons out here, using the traditional bow and arrow also. But guess what? Custer doesn't stop down here. He's trying to find a place to get across the river. He leaves 120 men there, and about 80 men in Custer come behind the ridge, and they go below the cemetery and try to cross the river below. But there's Cheyenne warriors hiding in the timber. They don't let him get across down here either. He pulls back where the National Cemetery is today. He sits for 20 minutes, they said, waiting and watching. 80 men down here, each man 124 rounds of ammunition. What do you think Custer's waiting for? He's waiting for the ammunition, by the way. He knows the message got through to Benteen. Benteen's right behind me. He'll be here any minute. Not on this day, folks. Custer's left by himself down here. Well, he's not by himself, is he? Because warriors are coming by the hundreds. They stop Reno. They're all converging on George Custer down here. It falls apart first down there. Lame white man of Cheyenne warriors in the ravines. He encourages the warriors around him. Come on, boys, jump up. There's not many soldiers on top of that hill. We can kill them all. And he leads a charge over that ridge. And like a tidal wave, the warriors go over. James Calhoun is killed down there with his men. White Bull and Crazy Horse are in hand-to-hand combat on the backside of the ridge. You'll see over 100 soldier markers back there. Another last stand. There's a fighting Irishman over there. His name is Miles Kell. Miles Kell. He's riding a horse named Comanche. Shot. Falls off his horse. His men gather around him. There's a last stand over there. They're overrun by the warriors. Some of you know the story of Comanche. He survives the battle and becomes the mascot of the 7th. These men will try to get to George Custer down here. Most will not make it. Where's Custer? Custer moves his men into the area below where the monument stands today. Warriors are at the top of the hill shooting down at him. He's got the low ground. And then something's going to hit him. Remember those young suicide warriors? Here they come into the battle. They come off this area right here and swing down and hit these soldiers. They're going to stampede horses. At this point, Custer must hold on and wait for help. He seizes the high ground. Some of the men begin to shoot their horses to get behind him for breastworks. The warriors surround this hill. Custer's looking this direction saying, where is Benteen? Benteen's not coming. We're going to find that arrows are falling on top of the ridge by the hundreds. The Indians said it was raining arrows up there. We could not see the men behind dead horses, but we knew where they were. We kept pouring lead at the top of the hill. No man knew what bullet was hitting what up there. Kate Bighead, a Cheyenne woman, is down there. We could not see the soldiers. It was smoke and dust, but we knew where they were. We could see the dead horses occasionally. And from where she was, I could see hundreds of warriors, she said, crawling up through the grass, raising up fire and getting back down before the soldiers could take careful aim. At some time towards the end of the battle, some of the men come off this top of this hill. What were they doing? We don't know. He-Dog is down there. He said they came running, about 28 to 30 of them. They tried to escape by jumping into the deep ravine down here. They were all killed down there. The gunfire eventually slackens from behind the dead horses, and the warriors think all the soldiers are dead, so they run up by the hundreds to the top of the hill. There's 4 or 5 soldiers still alive. They're killed. That is about a Little Bighorn down here. How many warriors were killed here? Perhaps 40 or 50. We don't know the exact numbers. The Lakota and Cheyenne, they took their dead away from the battlefield, buried them in teepees, scaffolds, in the hills as they left the area. We know that there were basically 53 men killed with Reno Benteen, 210 with George Custer. Some of the bodies were mutilated, but they'd all laid in a 100-degree temperature for 3 days. They said it was a scene of sickening, ghastly horror. Difficult to recognize your closest friend. The 7th Cavalry survivors will have to bury those 260 bloated bodies with only 7 shovels. So they will use their hands and forks and knives and tin cups and lay sagebrush on the bodies of many soldiers. That's the burial they're going to get because the wounded are more important than the dead. They will find George Custer lying on top of this ridge, the very top of the hill. They said it was hard digging, so they buried him on the side of the hill. He'll be found nude, all his clothing taken away by the warriors. He will not be scalped. He has his hair cut short in 1876, time of this battle. He'll be found with a bloody bullet wound in the left temple, probably the one that killed him. No powder burns, probably was not a suicide, and a shot in the heart area. Either one would have killed him. Beside him will be his younger brother, Thomas Custer, commander of Company C. In the Civil War, he won 2 medals of honor, even something George Custer couldn't do. He's found beside his brother. Further down the hill, another brother. Boston Custer came along as a civilian. Just for the ride, folks. And we're also going to find out next to him his 18-year-old nephew, Harry Armstrong Reed, came along with Uncle George for summer vacation. George Custer gets the deepest burial of all, 18 inches. The men are buried on the battlefield where they fell out here. By the way, all things were taken by the warriors and the peoples, against whose wishes. Sitting Bull told them not to do it, but they didn't listen to him. He said something terrible will happen to our people. We're going to find out a year later they will come back to bury these men more decently with more shovels. The officers were taken back east. Custer was taken to West Point, New York, where he lies today. The other bodies buried on the battlefield. By 1881, the wolves and the rains keep showing up with these bodies out here. They keep popping up to the surface of the soil. So the War Department takes all the bodies they can find and put them in a mass grave, which is where you see that big stone. That has their headstone today. You see all the names of the men who are buried at the base of that hill for the most part. The white markers you see dotting the landscape for the next 5 miles, put up 10 years after the bodies were exhumed. They show you the approximate location of the original burials. As far as we know, there's no soldiers under those white markers today. Well, folks, you know the rest of this story. It's called Custer's Last Stand, but it became the last stand for the Lakota and Cheyenne Nation. Their greatest victory, but the beginning of the end for their nomadic way of life of hunting the buffalo. They'll be chased to the reservations very quickly. In 1877, he surrenders. His people starving to death. Crazy Horse gives up. As he's being forced into a guardhouse at Camp Robinson, he will resist being encaged in that guardhouse. He'll begin to fight with a knife. He'll be bayoneted in the back and will die from that wound. Sitting Bull will escape to Canada until in 1881 he will give up after 5 years of being in Canada. He will eventually travel around the world with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show in 1885. He will be killed by police as they try to arrest him in 1890 during the Ghost Dance Uprising on the reservation, shortly before the tragedy of Wounded Knee. Folks, on this hot Sunday afternoon, a bloody Sunday afternoon, there was a man fighting on this ridge behind me. His name was Gall. Gall said, I was angry. I fought only with a hatchet. And why was Gall angry? Because Reno's men were shooting into the teepees. They will kill 2 of his wives and 3 of his daughters. But folks, it's equally as sad on the other side for Maggie Calhoun. That's Custer's sister. She loses her husband on that hill, 3 brothers and a nephew on this hill down here. And in conclusion, quite often we say this battle is a window to our historic past. And if it is such a window, when we look backwards, we see why we're sitting here at this battlefield today. Why are we sitting at this battlefield today? Because of racism, greed, anger, hatred, prejudice, ethnocentricity. And maybe someday we can get on the other side of that window and look to the future and see a lot less of all those things. We can say we've learned something from the Battle of Little Bighorn, the Battle of the Greasy Grass, a place where Americans were killing Americans on a hot Sunday afternoon. You've been a wonderful audience. I appreciate you listening carefully. And just starting in about 5 minutes will be our next Ranger Talk down at the teepees. Hope you'll catch that Ranger Talk. Be careful with the construction today and have a safe journey. Enjoy your stay at the battlefield. Thank you.
65 years of nightly rodeos has earned Cody the title of Rodeo Capital of the World. Got to salute the competitors here tonight as well as the cowboy and cowgirl in us all. Let's recite Red Steele's poem, Hats Off to the Cowboy. The city's folks think that it's over. The cowboy has outlived his time. An old worn-out relic, a thing of the past. But the truth is, he's still in his prime. The cowboy is the image of freedom, a hard-riding boss of the range. His trade is a fair one. He fights for what's right, and his ethics aren't subject to change. He still tips his hat to the ladies, lets you water first at the pond. He believes a day's work is worth a day's pay, and his handshake and word are his bond. Now let's meet some of the bucking horses of the Ivory Rodeo Company. These animal athletes are much like the cowboys that live to ride them wild and spirited. They're highly respected and admired by rodeo cowboys and rodeo fans alike. Early day cowboys were gamblers by nature, just as their rodeo cowboy descendants are today. No one forces these cowboys to rodeo. They pay for the opportunity to compete in America's #1 sport, or rodeo. Now let me introduce our stock contractor. He's been a part of every end of the rodeo business. He qualified for the National Finals Rodeo in the bareback riding 4 times and was runner-up for the world title. Ladies and gentlemen, your stock contractor, Mr. Jim Ivory. Carrying our American flag tonight, Miss Mandy Anderson. Are you folks here tonight proud to be American? All right, would you please stand, remove cover, down here and shoot 5. Bareback riding competition. Out in our arena tonight, we've got our pickup man, Mr. Will Highland, 3 times all-around champ of Canada. Mr. Matt Mangus. We couldn't put on a rodeo without these guys. Our Wrangler judges down here, Lance Cathcart and Bill Wolfsby. These judges stand there and watch these cowboys and the bronc or the bull whenever they're riding. They'll score 1 to 25 on each side for the cowboy and 1 to 25 on each side for the animal, making a score of 100 possible.
Well, 1 to 25 is only 50.
Hey, there's 2 of them though, Marvin.
Oh, I
There's Judge Judy and who do you call them? You're always talking about.
Brown.
Yeah, okay, that's who
You
we
don't
got.
watch TV, so you can't relate to some of this.
No, I don't know about them television
Are you
things.
ever going to retire and start watching TV?
Not that retired.
Y'all think I'm joking. He don't watch TV.
Scott Nording swings the gate. Jack Bowman, hey cowboy, pick the northern cowboy. Jack Bowman in the next coat. Put on a good ride for us the first thing tonight. That's the way we like it. Get rodeo started real good.
Yeah.
Matt Mangus pulls over there and helps Zach Bowman down to the ground. Now you can hear that applause. Well, let's go down to shoot 6 now. Shane Anderson. One about a cowboy riding howdy tonight. Zach Bowman just turned in a score of 63 on that red-toed horse. 63. Shane Anderson. He was a high school champ back a couple of years ago, or a few years ago, I better say. I think Shane's a little older than that. But he's rodeoed a long time for a young man. Starvin' Marvin Nash out there riding his horse around tonight.
Welcome to Cody, Wyoming.
Scott Nording, our bullfighter, down there gathering up pieces of fly off the horses. Cody Nash swinging the gate. Not on the gate, but he'll pull it open, and that cowboy's ready to ride. Here we go. Shane Anderson, riding cowboy. Boy, they look mighty good from up here. I didn't see any flags on the ground. If you see a flag hit the ground. Oh, Shane didn't quite make it tonight. That was close. A little too close for me to call, but no score for Shane Anderson. I don't know if you appreciated what he did, though. Let's go down to shoot 8 now. Brad Stoltz, Sydney. All right, we got those horns, and here he comes looking for the back feet, and he got half of them. It's a good way to get it started. That'll cost the Cowboys 5 seconds for not picking up both back legs.
Where are they coming from, Don?
The bareback riding tonight is sponsored by Pinnacle Bank and Granny's Restaurant right downtown. Next team, Tim Ballard, Malaga, New Mexico, and Justin Cross from Sturgis, South Dakota. The time for that first team was a 9.8, but they had a 5-second penalty for only picking up one back leg, made a total of 14.8. Let's see how Justin Ballard and Justin Cross do now. Tim Ballard, the header. We call him the header and the healer. You can see that header will come out and get his rope around the horns or around the neck of that steer. The healer will come in behind him then and try to pick up both back legs at the same time. We have a barrier rope down there. If the steer pulls loose, gives him about a 10-foot head start on those cowboys. If the cowboy hits that barrier rope, that costs him 10 seconds. All right, let's watch him. Tim Ballard gets him around the horns. Hey! 7.2, the time for that team. Got a new leader already. Plus 10. 3 people.
What do you think? I'll scoot back that way just a little bit. We'll go over the rules right quick while everybody's getting lined up. Now, the first rule is we don't really have any rules. So that's pretty simple. Now, the second rule is because you're out west and we have a code of the west, it's the rule, if you run over, if you're a big kid, and you run over a little kid, you have to stop and pick them up. That's the rule. Now you don't misunderstand, you don't have to do it right when you run over them, but before you leave, you gotta pick them up. And the last rule is, all that green stuff that's on the calf's tail, that's not the ribbon. Don't grab the green stuff. Okay, we're going to turn him out. When I say 3, you can go, but don't go early. There he comes. Everybody ready? All you got to do is grab the ribbon off his tail. 1, 2. I didn't say 3. You got to give that calf a chance to figure out which way he's going. 3, go!
Well, I'll tell you, he had a grip on that ribbon more than I thought he was going to with that tail in his hand.
What is your name? Where are you from, Eric? Well, you sitting over here? Oh, okay. Our winner is Eric Gibson from Greencastle, Pennsylvania.
Steer riding is sponsored tonight by Cody Farm and Ranch Supply, just out south of Cody, right on the highway. Anything you got, they'll get it if they don't have it already. The Irma Hotel and Restaurant, right downtown Cody. Be sure and stop in and look that place over.
Are we supposed
Built by Buffalo Bill.
Yeah, we're supposed to tell them that they think it's haunted now?
The Irma is haunted?
That's what they say.
All right.
See? I stayed there one time.
Car, right in there, Cody Pam. Uh-oh. I think Cody's head and that young bull's head kind of got close to each other out there. And that bull's got a lot harder head in there. Not around my home now, Marvin, but around some of these other people.